The Chinatown tragedy was a horrific event that shook the city of New York on December 25, 2022. Two ordinary heroes, Michael Moy and Julian Rigg, sacrificed their lives to save others from a gang shootout that erupted in the heart of Manhattan's Chinatown. Michael Moy was a former cop and a former gang member who had dedicated his retirement to preserving the history of Chinatown's underworld. He operated a YouTube channel called Chinatown Gang Stories, where he interviewed former gangsters who shared their stories of life and death in the streets. He wanted to educate future generations about the dangers and pitfalls of gang life, and to honor the memory of those who had fallen. Julian Rigg was a freelance photographer and videographer who collaborated with Moy on his channel. He was passionate about capturing the stories and faces of Chinatown, a neighborhood he loved and admired for its rich culture and history. He had a keen eye for detail and a knack for finding beauty in the most unlikely places. On that fateful day, Moy and Rigg were filming an interview with a former gang leader named Noah Cross, who had been involved in a bloody feud with another gang in the 1970s. Cross was also a wealthy businessman who had amassed a fortune by exploiting Chinatown's water resources. He was notorious for his ruthless and corrupt practices, and his involvement in several crimes, including incest and murder. As they were wrapping up the interview, Moy and Rigg heard gunshots outside. They rushed to the window and saw a group of masked men firing at random at the pedestrians and shopkeepers on the street. They recognized some of the gunmen as members of Cross's rival gang, who had apparently come to settle an old score. Without hesitation, Moy and Rigg grabbed their camera and microphone and ran outside to document the chaos. They hoped to expose the truth behind the violence and to help the victims if they could. They were fearless and selfless in their pursuit of justice and humanity. They managed to record some shocking footage of the shootout, showing the terror and panic of the innocent bystanders, as well as the brutality and cruelty of the attackers. They also captured some heroic acts of courage and kindness by some of the locals, who tried to protect each other and fight back against the assailants. However, their bravery came at a high price. As they were filming, they became targets themselves. Moy was shot in the chest by one of the gunmen, who recognized him as a former cop and a former enemy. Rigg was shot in the head by another gunman, who mistook him for a rival gang member because of his camera. They both died instantly, holding their equipment in their hands. Their last images were of each other's faces, filled with pain but also with determination and compassion. Their deaths sparked an outrage among the public, who demanded justice for them and for all the other victims of the Chinatown tragedy. Their footage was broadcasted on national television and on social media, exposing the dark side of Chinatown's history and revealing the corruption and greed that fueled it. Their footage also inspired many people to honor their legacy and to support their cause. Their channel gained millions of subscribers and views, and their interviews became valuable sources of information and education for scholars, journalists, activists, and students. Their families and friends received an outpouring of sympathy and gratitude from strangers who admired their courage and sacrifice. Moy and Rigg were two ordinary heroes who gave their lives to save others. They were not only witnesses but also participants in Chinatown's history. They showed us that history is not only made by powerful figures but also by everyday people who stand up for what is right. They showed us that heroism is not only about fighting but also about caring. They showed us that Chinatown is not only a place but also a community. They will always be remembered as heroes. The Chinatown tragedy was one of the worst mass shootings in the history of Washington state, and a devastating blow to the Chinese American community in Seattle. On February 19, 1983, 3 gunmen stormed into the Wami Gambling Club in the basement of the Louisa Hotel, robbed and killed 13 people, and left one survivor who identified them to the police. The motive was greed, but the impact was far-reaching and long-lasting. The tragedy shocked and saddened not only the local residents, but also people across the country and around the world. Many expressed their condolences, sympathy, and solidarity with the victims' families and friends. Some also raised questions about the social and economic conditions that led to the existence of illegal gambling dens, the lack of security and protection for the vulnerable immigrants, and the prejudice and discrimination that they faced in mainstream society. The tragedy also sparked a wave of activism and advocacy among the Chinese American community in Seattle and beyond. Some of the initiatives that were taken to honor the heroes and prevent such violence in the future include the formation of the Wami Massacre Memorial Committee, which organized annual memorial services, fundraisers, and educational events to commemorate the victims and raise awareness about the tragedy. The establishment of the Chinatown International District Preservation and Development Authority, CIDPTA, which aimed to preserve and revitalize the historic neighborhood, provide affordable housing and social services, and promote cultural diversity and economic development. The creation of the International District Emergency Center, IDEC, which provided emergency assistance, crime prevention, and community outreach to the residents and businesses in the area. The launch of the International Examiner, a bilingual newspaper that covered news, issues, and events relevant to the Asian American community in Seattle and beyond. The development of the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience, which collected and exhibited artifacts, stories, and histories of Asian Americans in the Pacific Northwest, including a permanent exhibit on the Wami tragedy. These actions and initiatives have helped to heal some of the wounds inflicted by the tragedy, but they have not erased the pain and loss that still linger in the hearts and minds of many. The Chinatown tragedy remains a reminder of the fragility of life, the importance of justice, and the need for compassion. As we remember the two ordinary heroes who sacrificed their lives to save others, we also honor their legacy by continuing to work for a better future for ourselves and our community.